Texas was not eating the dogs, as the Dogs decided to eat beef instead. Texas women's soccer drops a top 5 matchup against Arkansas, woo pig if you will. Lastly, Formula One made its return in a wild weekend that you definitely did not want to attend a wedding. We'll also have an analysis on this weekend's UFC fight. All this and more coming up on College Press Box. Good evening and welcome back to College Press Box. We once again have another jam-packed show for you tonight, but before we start tonight's episode, we want to remind you that today's College Press Box is brought to you by Cap Metro, Austin's very own transit system. We connect you from work, school, play, everywhere in between. Plan your ride this weekend to this weekend's game at Cap Metro. The most anticipated matchup of the 2024 season was played this past Saturday with the number 5 Georgia Bulldogs coming into town. It was a fiery contest with offense, but offense wasn't quite rolling on both sides. But you know who was? The defense. Let's take a look at the highlights. On the first drive of the game, Quinn Ewers' pass is intercepted by the Bulldog defense. Right after, you have another incomplete pass, and Coach Sarkisian decided to make a quarterback switch, and you know who it was? Arch Manning stepped in. And immediately after that, he was, sacked by the defense, and they didn't look too hot. And then you would have, clearly you can see them celebrating, which is great. Then you would have another fumble by Arch, and I don't know what Sarkisian was thinking on that because it slipped out of his hands. Georgia was leading 23-0 heading into the first half. Right here, you have an incomplete pass that Carson Beck would throw, and you know who would break that up? Austin's very own Michael Taft. And you know, you can see him celebrate, which the defense was on fire. Heading on to the third quarter, this play right here was the momentum changer as Choate Barron with an interception, giving Texas fans some hope. And clearly we saw the third quarter incident, so we don't need to talk about that at all, because it was quite controversial. Ewers finds Bond in the end zone right here in this play once he snaps the ball. He looks for him, passes, putting Texas up on the board for its first touchdown of the night. Now, obviously, Isaiah Bond was a key player right here. Instead of going for the punt, what they decided to do is go for a 2-point conversion, finding Isaiah Bond again, 23-8. Now, Beck passes off the ball right here, and it looks like Baron Sorrell with a massive takedown. He would have himself a fantastic night along Choate Barron. Ewers finds Jaden Blue for its second Texas touchdown, and Georgia ends up ultimately winning the ball game 30-15 in a game where defense played a major role. Aram Vela and Giorgy Ruiz had the pleasure of covering this past weekend's game, where it was a bunch of stars on the sideline and a primetime game. Here's what they had to say.
It was an exciting day here Saturday night, college game day in Austin. The two top dogs in the SEC collided for a monumental showdown. This was one of Texas' biggest games at DKR in a very, very long time, and unfortunately they did end up falling short. Forget the eyes of Texas. The eyes of America were on Austin, and they were on the Bulldogs and the Longhorns on Saturday night.
After being down 23-0, Texas launched a valiant comeback effort in the third quarter, fueled by touchdowns by Jaden Blue and Isaiah Bond. However, that deficit proved too deep to overcome for the Longhorns.
I just think that we didn't start the way that we obviously wanted to, and playing catch-up is tough for an offense, but
the fans at DKR Saturday night showed their frustrations by throwing water bottles onto the field after a controversial pass interference call against Choate Barron in the third quarter, which was later overturned.
I try to stay maintained and stay focused, but Martin Luther King says you don't judge somebody when it's convenient and things like that. You judge a true man's character when you go through controversy and challenges. So I mean, it's just a challenge, and as a team, we're going to move on from it. We still trust Sark. Sark is a great leader, and our culture and our brotherhood.
And while this was a very disappointing loss for the Texas Longhorns, they cannot hold their heads down for too long. They have a very tough SEC opponent next week in Vanderbilt up in Nashville, who just a couple weeks ago knocked off the #1 ranked Alabama football team. And if there's one thing that coaches and players alike emphasize in press conferences, it's that this team can still achieve everything they want to, and it's going to be a mentality game from here on out. Jade Barron said that you're not going to judge somebody when things are going well. Their true character shows through the face of adversity, and the Longhorns definitely had adversity tonight. They didn't get the result they wanted to, but they still have a lot of football left to be played. At DKR Stadium, I'm Aram Vela signing off for TSTV Sports.
Down goes #1 Texas to #5 Georgia, and a stunning matchup here at DKR. You know, the Texans had a rocky start in the first half, and they started picking it up in the second half, but it just wasn't enough, and Georgia pulls through with a 30-15 win here at DKR. It was a star-filled weekend here in Austin, Texas, with celebrities coming in from all over for F1 and one of the biggest games of the season. We saw Longhorn legends like Colt McCoy, Glenn Powell, Matthew McConaughey, and even Kevin Durant in attendance on one of the biggest games of college football. But what they and the rest of Longhorn Nation did not expect was this Georgia defense to run circles around these Longhorns in the first half, putting up some of the best coverage we've seen all season. The constant pressure to the Texas' O-line forced 3 fumble recoveries and 7 quarterback sacks. Texas just couldn't get out of the mindset, and Quinn was taken out and replaced by Arch in the second quarter, but Georgia capitalized on them, keeping that pressure and growing their lead 23-0 by halftime. And though Quinn came back in the second half, showing more promise than the first, it simply wasn't enough for the Horns, making #5 Georgia take down the #1 Texas Longhorns and breaking their undefeated streak in the SEC.
I had a lot of mistakes. You know, nobody's perfect, but my mom always tell me, you know, good is not good enough. So, I mean, I could have done more. I could have tackled better today and things like that to help my team and be in a better position. I could have had better eyes. So at the end of the day, good is not good enough, and I think everybody should always know that. Even when you guys are working, to do more and to be better and to excel to the fullest. So.
And Texas proves that it was just a mental game coming in from now to the rest of the season. Next week, they got going up against Vanderbilt, who beat #1 Alabama a few weeks back. So we just have to make sure that Texas gets into the right mentality for it. And for TSTV Sports, I'm Giorgy Ruiz.
The Longhorns dropped to the 5th spot in the AP poll. To fill us in a little more on this Texas loss and their first loss, I'll pass it over to Campbell.
Thanks, Deb. I'm joined here with Tyler Strempel to discuss kind of what went wrong for the Longhorns on Saturday. So how you doing, Tyler?
Always good to be here on College First TV Analysis. The circumstances obviously not great, but, you know, in a loss, the analysis kind of matters more. So, you know, always got to have that silver lining when you have just as bad of a weekend as we did on Saturday.
I'm glad you're in a good mood because I'm still a little mad from that loss. But the Longhorns suffered their first loss of the season this past weekend. What's your take on what went wrong for them?
There were many issues on, I think, both sides of the ball. To say the least. That's putting it really nicely. I was on 1-0 last Friday. I said that Texas would have to win the football game by having the offensive line be able to block Georgia's pass rush. They did not succeed at that in the slightest, yes, on Saturday. Not only did the pass rush give up 7 sacks, which is just inexcusable, barely at all in the game did Quinn Ewers have any time in the pocket. You have 1 interception, which is shocking for the amount of sacks he had and the little amount of time he had in the pocket. Texas just didn't give themselves the chance to make any progress offensively, and you cannot win if you cannot score points. That's a result of the loss, I think.
Yeah, definitely. If they want to beat Vandy, they have to stop that pass rush. But in your opinion, what can Texas take away that's good from this past week going to their game against Vandy on Saturday at 3:15?
I had to kind of dig deep for this one, but I think you can look at the defense and be proud of some of the plays that they made. Carson Beck did throw 3 interceptions, and statistically, he really did actually not have a good game at all. The secondary was able to make play after play on the ball. 3 interceptions. They rushed him in the pocket. 30 points for a Georgia offense was actually lower than was expected. It could have been a shootout. But the defense did everything they could possibly do to keep Georgia within a certain amount of points. But when Texas's offense cannot support the defense all game, you just can't win. And I think Texas can take their defensive play and be satisfied with that effort on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, defense did pretty much everything they could. And Jade Barron actually had himself, he had a game. And even Sark said today he might move him to safety just because if he's out everywhere on the field, you just got to have them there. Yeah. But what was once a done deal with Ewers starting is now sort of a controversy after this game. Should Ewers retain his spot, or should Sark start manning over him on Saturday?
I said this last week and I'll say it this week. No, Ewers should not be benched. Taking his stats by themselves without the context of anything that happened during the game, 25 of 43 for 211 yards with 2 touchdowns and an interception. Not the worst game of all time. It's kind of like a median game statistically. Much better statistically than Carson Beck's 3 interception day. His issues were more related to the offensive line's just awful play, not really himself. Arch Manning did go in at the end of the second half, and he did not do good at all. He went 3 of 6, 19 yards, got 2 sacks in like 3 minutes, and one of them resulting in that fumble, as we talked about earlier. Yes, some of that was the offensive line's ineffectiveness, but throughout the game, we saw that Ewers, even with that small sample size of Manning, Ewers just was better against Georgia than Manning was in the end of that second quarter. So going off what we saw Saturday, there's no reason to bench Ewers just because Manning is as hyped of a backup as he is.
Yeah, you talk to Sark, you talk to all the players, they will say over and over again, it's Quinn's team, even if 247 says he might be sitting off the NFL draft, which that's just not true. But thank you, Tyler. I'll toss it back to Deb at the desk.
Thank you, Campbell and Tyler, for that little 24/7 little mistake, even though that intern's probably going to get fired. When we return to College Press Box, women's soccer has been on a roller coaster throughout their 2024 SEC schedule. Jovanny Leon returns to fill us in a little more on what's going on with them.
Welcome back to College Press Box. Texas soccer is 4-3-1 in SEC play and could not upend the Razorbacks in a top 5 matchup this past Friday. For more, I'll kick it to Deb.
Thanks, Campbell. I'm joined alongside Jovanny Leon. How are you doing today?
I'm great. It was not a good game, but it's always a pleasure to be here and talk some women's soccer.
Not a good game is never good to hear. No. Anyways, the Longhorns suffered a tough loss against Arkansas, making their 3rd loss in the SEC play. What happened?
Yeah, it was actually a good game overall. Not for the Longhorns, though, but I think they started really well, actually. They attacked the game exactly the way they should against a top 5 ranked side like Arkansas. And they were exploiting their high line by playing those long balls over the top to the forwards. We saw this executed beautifully early on in the 6th minute of the match with the long ball from the goalkeeper, Mia Justice, all the way up to Holly Ward, who fought through and finished off brilliantly to put Texas 1-0 up. And it's actually really rare to see goalkeepers get assists, so well done to Mia for that. But I think Texas should have tried doing that more because there was another chance they had that almost resulted in another goal by Holly Ward. A long ball was played to her, and she did everything right, went around the keeper, but unfortunately, the Arkansas defender got back in time to save her shot on the line. But overall, it was by no means a terrible performance against a top 5 team, but I think Texas could have won the game if they had kept playing the way they did in the first half.
You know, I think that's a tough thing with soccer. It's you have either have a really good first half or a really good second half. It's a long 90 minutes. You got to give them that. While the Longhorns did drop the match, we got to look at some positive. There has to be. What do you think Texas did correctly?
There were some positives. The offense was really good, actually. You know, scoring 3 goals against that Arkansas defense, which they'd only conceded 1 goal in the previous 5 games. So scoring 3 goals is really good. And Lexi Mismo actually had a good game. She extended her lead as the all-time top scorer with her 54th goal for Texas. She also got herself an assist in a nice combination with Ashley Miller for the 3rd goal, which was her 60th career assist. And also, we need to talk about the freshman, number 44, Amalia Villarreal. She is honestly one of the best one-on-one dribblers I've ever seen. The way she can consistently beat her opponent down the wing is second to none. And she's one of those players that gets you off your seat with her silky skills. She's a very well-rounded player, even defensively. And even though she already has 7 goals this season, I'd just like to see her add a few more goals to her game and almost be selfish in a way that she's not afraid to take the shots herself.
I will say soccer is definitely one of those sports where you kind of have to be a team player but you also kind of have to be a little selfish
Yeah.
with it. So it'll definitely be a little interesting to see her take a little bit more shots. Now, Texas needs to bounce back, especially as they head towards the end half of the conference play. What areas do you think they need to work on the most?
Certainly defense, especially seeing them concede 4 goals. You know, they were able to score 3, but conceding 4 is really not great. And yeah, certainly they need to solidify their defense. However, the hard part isn't identifying what they need to do, but rather knowing how to fix it. Because, you know, when you lose 4-3, it's quite clear you need to work on that. However, as we can see, the second goal from Arkansas is a perfect example of the sloppiness of the defense. We saw the ball scrambling in the box, and I don't understand why nobody cleared it, especially considering that there was only 1 minute left until halftime. That goal should never have been allowed to happen, and it completely changed the dynamic of the game. It gave Arkansas the psychological advantage going into the second half, which is a huge factor. If Texas could have held on to their lead, they would have gone into the second half with a much better control of the game. But overall, I think the Longhorns allowed too much space for the opposing attackers, and I think that in this sort of top 5 game, they should have definitely set up in a low block to make it harder for the Arkansas offense, especially when we know how difficult how dangerous they can be.
Yeah, no, you talk about that, especially scoring a goal with almost 2 minutes at the very end before you go into the half.
It's tough.
Not only is it tough, but it's talk about a momentum shift. Like you know exactly what you're gonna say when at halftime. Kind of just moves the situation, and there's nothing you really can do about that. Thank you so much for your analysis.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and pass it over to Campbell back at the desk.
Thanks to the both of you. When we come back on College Press Box, Texas and Georgia wasn't the only event that packed I-35 this weekend. F1 returns to the Circuit of Americas for another nail-biting competition. Nolan Clay visits the show to offer his perspective. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back to College Press Box. Formula One has returned to the Circuit of Americas, or as I like to call it, cars driving around in squigglies. To fill us in is Campbell with a very special guest.
I'm here with Nolan Clay making his debut on College Press Box. Are you nervous, and how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. You know, it was such an electric weekend at F1 this weekend. So many fans, such a great race. I'm so excited to talk about it.
Yeah, and after a very eventful weekend at the Circuit of Americas, who would you pinpoint as the biggest winners of the weekend?
Yeah, this is an extremely tough question to answer as there were many impressive performances this weekend, but there's no doubt that the biggest winner of the weekend has to be Team Ferrari. After a rather disappointing sprint race from Ferrari, they were able to blow away the field from start to finish in the Grand Prix as drivers Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz finished 1-2. This result puts Ferrari only 48 points behind McLaren in the Constructors' Championship, and if Ferrari can keep up the pace shown on Sunday, there is no reason they can't give McLaren and Red Bull a run for their money. My second biggest winner of the week has to be the sprint race winner and individual points leader, Max Verstappen. Not only did he pick up key points by winning the sprint race, he also finished ahead of title rival Lando Norris in the Grand Prix, further increasing his lead over him in the individual standings. What once looked like a title that would be Lando's to lose is now looking a bit more far-fetched, which is a very welcoming sight for Max Verstappen. With 5 races left and a 57-point lead over Norris, it's getting harder and harder to envision a scenario where Max Verstappen isn't holding his 4th straight World Drivers' Championship trophy in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, now going to the other side of the spectrum, who do you think were the biggest losers of the weekend?
Yeah, there were a couple shocking performances this weekend, but the disaster class by Team Mercedes takes the cake. Straight from the get-go on Friday, you could tell that Mercedes drivers George Russell and Lewis Hamilton were struggling with the car. After a mediocre sprint race finishing 5 and 6, it only got worse for Mercedes as Lewis Hamilton would proceed to qualify in 19th out of 20th, and George Russell crashed, forcing him to start the Grand Prix from the pit lane. While George Russell did have a really solid race, climbing back up to 6th place, Lewis Hamilton did not find the same success as he ended up spinning out of the race on only lap 2. Overall, a disaster week for Mercedes. The other big loser of the weekend for me has to be Sergio Perez from Team Red Bull. While Lando Norris did have his world championship hopes take a hit this week, at least he knows he has a job next season. Perez can't say the same thing. Simply put, finishing 7th and letting George Russell, who started from the pit lane, finish ahead of you is really embarrassing. With Sergio continuing to struggle and young guns like Franco Colapinto, Liam Lawson, and Yuki Tsunoda impressing fans, Perez can find himself driving for a much worse team next year.
Yeah, I definitely think job security is a pretty big marker of how you're doing on the racetrack. But with only 5 races left on the calendar, who do you think will win the Constructors' Championship and the World Drivers' Championship?
Yeah, I mean, with Ferrari finding late season form, the Constructors' both races have gone a bit more interesting. Starting with the Constructors' Championship, I think this will come down to Ferrari and McLaren, with Red Bull falling behind because they're simply they're not getting enough from Sergio Perez. While I think Ferrari will take it to the final race, I think McLaren will, with the depth of their 2 incredible drivers, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, and their 48-point lead over Ferrari will prove to be too much for the Italian team in the end. When it comes to the World Drivers' Championship, it seems like a clear 2-horse race between Verstappen and Norris. If you asked me who would take the title before this weekend, I would have told you Lando Norris would pull through. But after this weekend, give me Max Verstappen. Red Bull has seemed to find some much-needed pace to keep up with the McLaren car, and with the experience and poise of a driver of Verstappen's caliber, I think that would be just enough to see him take the title for the 4th straight season. However, F1 is unpredictable, and I'm eager to see if this already incredible season has another twist up its sleeve.
Yeah, and I heard it was a pretty star-studded weekend. Did you see any celebrities from y'all's seats?
I did not personally, but I know there was some really a lot of great celebrities there.
Brad Pitt, Serena Williams.
Yeah, I saw those videos. Unfortunately, from my view, I couldn't see it, but it was such a great weekend anyways. I'm not disappointed at all.
Yeah, dang. Maybe next race, but shout out also TSTV alum Alyssa King and Samantha Pearl. I know they'll be excited that we had an F1 segment, but thank you, Nolan, and we'll send it back to the desk for Debanny.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Nolan and Campbell. Coming up on College Press Box, UFC's 308 is headed to Saudi Arabia. Max Dagley makes his debut to offer his prediction for the Octagon. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to College Press Box. UFC 308 is in Saturday in Abu Dhabi, and there's plenty to look forward to. Let's go to Debanny again.
Thanks, Campbell. I'm joined with Max Dagley making his very own Press Box debut. How are we feeling, Max?
I'm feeling good. I'm excited to be here. Thrilled to talk about UFC 308 this weekend in Abu Dhabi.
Perfect. So let's go ahead and get right started. So what I've seen from face card value, this card is loaded. Big names and talent. What are the most impactful fights that will shape into this division?
Well, Debanny, one can argue that this is the top card of the year, as it features 3 current or former UFC champions, along with 2 fights whose victors will likely get the next title shot. With so many stellar fights, it's hard to pick just one. But the fight that will have the most immediate effect on any division will be the light heavyweight bout between number 2 ranked Magomed Ankalaev and 5th ranked Aleksandar Rakic. Ankalaev's disciplined, patient approach, matched up against Rakic's explosiveness, makes this fight an interesting one, as it could result in a technical chess match or a highlight reel finish. Ankalaev has been in title contention for a while, but with 2 draws in his last 3 bouts, the UFC has been hesitant to give him one. A dominant win this weekend over a proven fighter in Rakic will likely give him a title shot, as number 1 ranked Yuri Prochazka has already been defeated twice by champion Alex Pereira. So there will be no one left to stand in Ankalaev's way. On the other hand, Rakic is coming off a TKO loss at UFC 300 in April. So this weekend presents a make-or-break fight for him, as he will either earn a number 1 contender fight or slide down the rankings in an already stacked light heavyweight division.
I don't think anyone ever wants to slide down the rankings, but as a viewer, you kind of selfishly want to fight for the very end finishes just because it makes it a little more exciting, if you will. Shifting over to the light heavyweight division, the middleweight division offers up between 2 of the most fierce fighters in Robert Whittaker and Kamazi Chivaki. What about the fight makes those 2 stakes so high, and what do you think will be the outcome?
Well, I'm ecstatic that you asked me about this fight, as I believe it has a chance to go down as the best fight all weekend. Bobby the Reaper Whittaker is a UFC legend who has worn that championship gold before and wants nothing more than to reclaim it. His counterpart, Khamzat Chimaev, has a perfect record of 13-0 with a whopping 6 knockouts and 5 submissions in 11 of those 13 fights. These two have been marked to square off for a while, as Chimaev had to pull out of the first fight in June of this year. But fans are delighted as we finally get to see it this weekend. Whittaker is now 33, so his window to become the middleweight champion once again is closing rapidly. But on a 2-fight win streak that featured a KO in just June of this year, he has proved that he still has gas left in the tank. A win over a hungry, young prospect like Chimaev will all but guarantee him one last shot at the championship versus the winner of Duplessis versus Strickland. And it is a now or never opportunity for Whittaker given his momentum and age. Chimaev's UFC career has been one of a roller coaster. At one point, he was the most hyped prospect the sport had to offer, but has only fought once in the last 2 years and has had 6 fights canceled due to injuries and complications with weight for his fights. Due to inactivity, his fight this weekend is one where he will have to prove that he is still the same fighter fans once saw. And if he ever wants to be a champion, he will have to beat greats of the sport like Robert Whittaker. I believe this fight will come down to Robert Whittaker's ability to defend Khamzat Chimaev's relentless grappling. As Whittaker is a gifted striker, Chimaev will likely rely on his extensive background in wrestling to gain the edge, as it has been successful in the past. Although incredibly gifted in nearly every aspect, Chimaev has struggled with cardio throughout his career, and as the fight this weekend will be the first 5-round bout of his career, it is vital he finds an edge to gain momentum early. That edge is likely to be found on the ground, so if Whittaker can defend those takedowns, prioritize defense, and outstrike Chimaev, his chances to win become greater as the fight goes on. But then again, Chimaev's record speaks for itself, and his freestyle approach could be too much to handle as it has been in every one of his fights. Regardless, get your popcorn ready, because this is one you don't want to miss.
I will definitely be getting my popcorn ready, as from what everything you've told me, you might as well be in the room and giving them the breakdown to tell them what exactly they need to do to win. We've talked about 2 great matches so far, but let's take a look at the main card. What makes the featherweight title fight between Holloway and Torupia the biggest fight of this weekend?
Look, Debanny, this year, it's safe to say that the UFC has not failed to provide entertainment. With Alex Pereira's dominance and 3 new champions being crowned, the 2 most exciting, shocking moments from this year have come from each of these fighters. These moments were when Max Holloway slept Justin Gaethje at UFC 300 for the BMF title, and when Topuria dethroned featherweight great Alexander Volkanovski with a booming right hand at UFC 298. As an avid fan for many years, I cannot remember a recent fight that has had this much buzz around it. On one hand, you have an undefeated champion who's only 27, and the former champion who refuses to leave the title picture, each coming off statement victories that prove how dominant they are. Topuria is a ruthless fighter who can beat you in any way, totaling 13 wins by knockout or submission in only 15 fights. While Holloway is arguably the greatest boxer the sport has ever seen with 26 wins that include a 3-fight streak with 2 knockouts, And on that note, fans love knockouts, and the chances we see one in this fight are high. Each fighter is incredibly gifted with their hands, and we can expect a lot of big blows to land for both, as they each have a 49% rate of landing significant strikes. Although Topuria's fighting style is much more diverse than Holloway's, he's actually come out and challenged him. He said he's going to stand and bang with him and throw punches with each other until there is only one man standing. This will be difficult for Topuria to achieve given the insane fact that Holloway has not been knocked down in 1 of 33 MMA fights, but Ilia Topuria has already shocked the world once and has a chance to do it again this weekend. This fight is one that's going to affect the winner's legacy greatly. With the win, Topuria will cement himself as one of the best featherweights of all time, defeating 2 of the division's all-time greats in less than a year at the ripe age of 27. And for Holloway, a win would make him champion once more and add to an already legendary resume, giving him a very valid argument for the best featherweight of all time. In the words of Bruce Buffer, it's time, and this certified banger to wrap up a stat card on Saturday will make for a very exciting day for UFC fans.
You know, all I heard was there's a chance that there's going to be a knockout, so I will definitely be tuning in because, you know, who doesn't love a little bit of violence? Thank you for that analysis, Max. Back to you at the desk, Campbell.
Awesome stuff, you two. And look forward to this weekend. When we return College Press Box, we'll take a look at the past week in Longhorn sports and look forward at what's to come. Stick around with us on College Press Box. Welcome back to College Press Box. Let's take a look at this past week in Longhorn sports. Texas volleyball swept Arkansas on Friday, their 8th consecutive win, 5th straight sweep, and head coach Jarrett Elliott's 600th career win. Elliott was hired as head coach in spring of 2001, Texas volleyball's 7th head coach in history. Elliott won his first national championship in 2012 and tacked on 2 more in 2022 and 2023. He's also made the NCAA tournament every year but one during his tenure.
Cross country wrapped up its regular season this past weekend in Wisconsin for pre-nationals. Isaac Alonso and Olivia Howell were this weekend's top performers after finishing 32 overall in both races. Both teams will compete for the SEC championship in College Station come November 1st.
In Coach Sark's first season as head coach, Texas went 5-7. Now he's recognized on the midseason watch list for the 2024 Dodd Trophy. The trophy celebrates the importance of scholarship, leadership, and integrity, the 3 pillars of legendary Georgia Tech's football coach, Bobby Dodd. Sark was also honored on the Paul Bear Bryant Coach of the Year watch list last Wednesday. Sark's record at Texas is 25-14.
Now let's take a look at this week in Longhorn sports. On Wednesday, we have volleyball taking on Texas A&M at 7 p.m. on ESPNU. Thursday night, you have soccer taking on Missouri, 7 p.m. kick on the SEC Network Plus. Saturday, you have football facing off Vandy up in Nashville. The kick for that is going to be 3:15 on the SEC Network. And lastly, on Sunday, you have soccer taking on Georgia at Georgia for a 3 p.m. kick on SEC Network.
And that'll conclude this week's edition of College Press Box. Please make sure to tune into our other shows this week, including College Crossfire Wednesdays airing at 9 p.m. and the 1-0 Sports shows on Fridays, now at 11 a.m. Thank you to our analysts, everyone at Master Control, our executive producer Joseph Duffy, and everyone else at TSTV. I'm Campbell Choate.
I'm Debanny.
And thank you for joining us, and have a good night.